Welcome to Yahoo Finance Presents. I'm Alexis Christoforous, and joining me today is David Rubenstein, co-founder and co-chairman of the Carlyle Group and author of the new book, How to Lead: Wisdom from the World's Greatest CEOs, Founders, and Game Changers. David, it's great to see you again. Thanks for being with us. You know, not many people would have access to the names in this book, and I just want to tick off some of the names of the people in this book. You've got your usual suspects, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Tim Cook. But you've also got two presidents, George W. Bush and Bill Clinton. You've got a Supreme Court Justice, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Yo-Yo Ma, and Lorne Michaels. Talk about a wide array of who's who. How did you convince all of these people to do these interviews and to be part of the book?
Well, it took me a couple years to do it, but I started an interview show a few years ago, and people liked the show, and so I've been able to get people to go on it. And over the years, I've gotten to know these people reasonably well, and so I seduced them into going on the show and also letting me put them in the book. So it's a book that's designed to talk about leadership. And the reason for that is, my view is that we need to have more leaders in all areas of work and life. And I also want to inspire young people to see what the characteristics are of leadership, and maybe they will become leaders. In all society, all parts of society, we need leaders. And the better leaders we have, the better society we will live in. And so that's what the book is designed to do. Tell people what the characteristics are of some of our best leaders, and then inspire younger people to want to be like these people.
Yeah, I certainly found it to be inspirational and also pretty entertaining and humorous at times. You know, it was definitely a fast read, and there were some stories in there I hadn't heard before, like Jeff Bezos having named Amazon Cadabra,
right.
Like abracadabra in the beginning, and then he had to change it because people thought it was cadaver.
Right.
But talk about those characteristics. Was there a common thread amongst all the people you interviewed when it came to being an effective leader?
I think an effective leader has a number of characteristics in common. One, they have failed in something in life, so they picked themselves up and persisted. Persistence is very important. Nobody said to Jeff Bezos, that's a brilliant idea, selling books over the internet. Nobody said to Bill Gates, oh, we need more software. Nobody said to Tim Cook, oh, yes, you can take over from Steve Jobs, it'll be easy. So you have to persist. You also have to learn how to communicate with people. You have to show empathy to people. You also have to rise to the occasion. You also have to keep learning, keep reading. And I also think it's important to be honest with people and tell people the truth about what you're doing. And in the end, learn how to communicate. You can't have a leader if you can't get followers. You have to have followers, and you get followers by communicating orally or writing or leading by example.
Yeah, all amazing qualities. And you're right, transparency and leading by example, two big ones. But one of the common things you asked most of the people in the book is if they had any regrets. And I'm wondering, for you personally, David, are there regrets personally, business-wise, otherwise, that you have as you look back?
Well, being Jewish, I'm always regretting everything. I always look back and say, oh, I should have done this better. I should have done that better. But to quote the Frank Sinatra song, yeah, I have regrets, but too few to mention. So I've been very lucky in my life. I've risen to a level I never expected. I came from very modest circumstances. And so now I have a good fortune to be in a situation to do the things I'm doing. So I don't have regrets. I just wish I had been a better athlete, been more handsome, been more charming, all the things that I wish I had when I was younger.
Well, one of the things you are doing, and I'm sure you don't regret, is being one of the original signers of the Giving Pledge, a group of people who have committed to giving the majority of their wealth to philanthropy or charitable causes. How has this pandemic maybe changed the way you look at that Giving Pledge, David?
Well, I signed it. I was one of the original 40 because I thought I got very lucky in life, and I didn't really want to spoil my children by giving them each $1 billion or something. That probably wouldn't be a great thing for them, though they may not necessarily agree with that. But I think that the people who really lead the world are people that generally didn't have enormous amounts of inherited wealth. They make it on their own, and I thought that'd be better for my own children to do that. I also think that this COVID situation has made me realize my own mortality, because I'm 71. When you get to 71, you can get a doctor that might keep you alive for a while. If you get a disease, you can probably extend your life. But with COVID, you could be gone in 2 weeks. And so it's made me realize that I'm really mortal in ways I hadn't thought of before. Baby boomers like me have thought we'll live forever. We're still on the main stage. People running for president of the United States are baby boomers still, even though they're in their 70s. So I've thought, okay, I'll keep doing this for another 10 or 20 years. But now I realize, something bad could happen to me. I could get the COVID and I could be gone in 2 weeks. So I'm trying to get my bucket list done. I'm also trying to give away more money to the healthcare area and accelerate my giving because I may not be around as long as I once thought.
What are some of the items on the bucket list that maybe, I don't know, we're low on the bucket list before this pandemic, or maybe not even on the bucket list?
Well, being interviewed by you today was on my bucket list, and I want to thank you for doing that. My bucket list, places I haven't visited, things I'd like to give money to. And of course, make sure my children are successfully launched in their own careers. And I have 3 children, as you do, and mine are older than yours, and they're in the process of building their own careers. I want to make sure they're happy because, as you know, as a parent, the most important thing in life, probably in the end, is raising your children and making sure they're happy and healthy. And in the end, what you really want out of life is to leave a legacy, and your legacy is most likely going to be your children and how they perform. And as we all know, the hardest thing to do in life is to be happy. That's the most elusive thing in life. Thomas Jefferson talked about it in the Declaration of Independence, but he never told us how to get to be happy. But one of the ways of being happy is giving away money and giving away your time, helping other people, but also seeing that your children are successfully launched in their lives and that they're happy. And as you know, if your children are happy, you're going to be happy.
Yeah, no truer words have been spoken for sure. Getting back to this idea of leadership, does one set out to be a leader? Are those the most effective leaders, those who have leadership as a goal? Or is leadership something that sort of happens over time, perhaps in the latter stages of someone's life?
Well, I've divided life into 3 phases in the book. The early phase, the first phase, are people who are student body presidents, Rhodes Scholars, All-American athletes, Supreme Court clerks. Very often, they don't become the leaders in the second and third of life. Maybe they're burned out. The people that are leading our country today in so many areas were not the superstars when they were 18 or 19. Maybe for a number of reasons, these people burn out. So I do think that you can learn as a younger person, and ultimately you get enough leadership characteristics. So by the second third of your life, you're on your way. So if you were to pick the people who were president of the United States, the last 10 presidents of the United States, maybe only one of them would have been picked as a potential leader of the United States when he was young, and that was probably Bill Clinton, who was a star student. But most people who become president of the United States were not somebody said would be president of the United States when they were younger. So this is maybe a way to give hope to younger people like me who weren't such great leaders when we were younger, and to think if you keep working, you eventually will be a leader.
I'm going to say a person's name from the book, and you give me one word that describes them or epitomizes them. I want to play this game with you, and just give me the first word that pops into your head, okay? Here we go. Warren Buffett.
Sage.
Jamie Dimon.
Driven.
Oprah Winfrey.
Effusive.
Lorne Michaels.
Driven and really focused.
Was there anything, as you said, a lot of these folks on a personal level over the years. Did you learn anything about anyone in particular that you didn't know before you delved into this book and these interviews?
Well, when you interview somebody for an hour or so, you learn a lot about them. And I always try to ask people about their childhood to learn things they might not have talked about before, and maybe their weaknesses, their insecurities, and everybody has them. Jeff Bezos, for example, had some interesting insights. He never makes a major decision before 10 a.m. and no big decision after 3 p.m. And he insists on 8 hours of sleep at night. So I wish I had those insights before. I could have had more sleep and maybe been more successful. Everybody has their weaknesses, and everybody realizes they got lucky. You make your own luck in life, but to some extent, everybody who is in this book has a great deal of humility. Now, I never interviewed Napoleon or Julius Caesar or Alexander the Great. I suspect they were not humble people. If your last name is the Great, you probably aren't humble. But most of the people that are really successful in life, in the end, they realized there was a lot of luck. They had the help of other people. And so there's a lot of humility about it. Warren Buffett demonstrates that every day.
I'd love to get your take on just what we're seeing in the stock market right now. And for so long, we've seen this disconnect between these record highs we're experiencing in stocks, and yet, the worst economy we've had in decades and this horrible pandemic. Are you afraid right now of sky high valuations? Are we setting ourselves up for a big failure here in the stock market?
Herb Stein, the former head of the Council of Economic Advisors under Richard Nixon, said, if something can't keep going on forever, it won't. And I don't think this can keep going on forever. And as we talk today, the stock market is down a fair bit. but it's up a lot compared to where I think it should be. The economy is going, I'd say, level to down, and the stock market's going level to up. And I think in part that's because the technology stocks have driven the stock market up. If you were to take the tech stocks out, the stock market would better reflect the economy. But I do worry about the debt we borrowed to finance this COVID problem we have. And while I would probably have voted for everything if I was a member of Congress, we do have enormous amounts of debt. And at some point, your children and my children and grandchildren are going to have to pay this debt off.
You are no stranger to the White House, having been part of the Jimmy Carter administration. I'm sure you're looking at this upcoming election very closely. What are your thoughts on where the market might be headed? I mean, is it really going to hinge on who's in the White House, the fortunes of the stock market over the next few months and years?
The conventional wisdom is that the stock market does better if Republicans are in the White House. Actually, the stock market does slightly better when Democrats are in the White House. That's what the statistics show. And also the stock market does better when the government is divided, when it isn't controlled all by one party. But I think the market has not yet taken into account that whoever is president of the United States will have to impose higher taxes. I think we're going to have to pay for some of this debt. We can't continue to borrow 50% of the money we spend every year. And that's what we're doing right now. We're borrowing 50% of the dollars we're expending. At some point, somebody is going to have taxes go up. And I don't think anybody wants to say that in a campaign. But once the campaign's whoever's elected is probably going to have some tax increases or cutbacks in benefits.
What do you think the impact of those higher taxes is going to have on small businesses who might get crushed in all of this, who are the drivers of this economy, putting so many millions of people to work?
Well, small businesses right now are losing a lot of money, so I'm not sure they're going to be paying that much taxes. I do worry about small business because a lot of small businesses are going out of business. The average small business that employs 10 people or less, they have been really hurt by this, and many of them are not coming back. Many small restaurants that you might have seen in New York, they're not coming back. Food trucks, they're not coming back. A lot of very tiny businesses are going to go out of business. So I do worry about that because the heartbeat of American economy has been historically small business. That's where the job creation usually is. So it's a real challenge. And I think it's going to take us a few years to work our way out of this pandemic recession.
You know, Joe Biden has talked an awful lot about having to raise taxes, especially on the 1% of which you fall into. What's your feeling on that?
Well, nobody says, I want to be paid higher. I want to pay higher taxes. I mean, Warren Buffett has said that, but generally people don't say that. But I recognize that we have to pay for the money we're expending. And so I suspect I'll have higher taxes. And, you know, I'm not going to cry over it. I can afford higher taxes. I don't want higher taxes, but I think it's necessary.
I want to get back to the book for a moment because you've interviewed so many amazing people. Is there anybody left, any living person left that you would like to sit down and interview that you haven't yet? Getting back to sort of that idea of a bucket list, David.
Generally, the people that I haven't interviewed are people that don't do interviews. Queen Elizabeth doesn't do interviews. The Pope doesn't do interviews generally. Xi Jinping is not known to do interviews with Western reporters or maybe even Chinese reporters. Those are people I'd like to interview. But, you know, in the end, I think you can find an interesting story off of almost anybody. So I have interviewed famous people, but when you interview people who are not as famous, I think you get interesting stories as well. And I'm thinking about doing a book next, which will be people who are potential leaders, people in their 20s and 30s who are now look like they might be leaders and what they're going to do to change the world. Because these are people who already have changed the world. But now I'd like to talk about people who might be changing the world in 10 or 20 or 30 years.
Fascinating. I think that's a great fodder for a new book. You know, when you're talking about effective leadership and you look at what's happening in the White House right now, do you believe that Donald Trump is an effective leader for this moment in our country's history?
That's a complicated question, obviously. I think leadership is in the eye of the beholder, and he obviously has followers. So, you know, for some people, he's a very effective leader. For some people, he's not an effective leader. And I don't want to get into, you know, whether he's as effective a leader as he could be. I would say it's very difficult to judge today whether everything he's doing will work or not work. It's clear that the country is severely divided between the two candidates. And I would say I've been correct in wrongly predicting. I've been able to wrongly predict who the next president is going to be about 6 times in a row. Every time I thought somebody would be elected president, I was wrong. When I worked in the White House for Jimmy Carter, I thought he'd be reelected. I thought that John Kerry would be elected. I thought that Mitt Romney would be elected. I thought that Al Gore would be elected. So I'm wrong. So I don't know whether he's going to get elected or not, and I don't know whether it's fair to say he's an effective leader or not. Obviously, to his constituents he is, but to other people he doesn't seem to be effective. But I'm not going to judge whether he's effective or not. I'll let other people judge that.
Well, it certainly seems like you had a blast doing these interviews and writing this book. And not to take anything away from anybody, but is there one person in particular you really enjoy just sitting down with and talking to?
Well, I certainly enjoyed Jeff Bezos because we had 2,000 people there. It was really a very funny interview. He was terrific, great sense of humor. I certainly enjoyed interviewing Oprah Winfrey, who's a master interviewer and a person that I've known for a while. And obviously, whenever you interview Warren Buffett, it's always funny and humorous, and you get a sense of why he's so well respected and why he's so talented. And Coach K, I went to Duke University. I was chairman of the board for a while, and then interviewing the famous basketball coach at Duke was a great pleasure to me as well. So I enjoy all of them, and I try to prepare for them, just as you obviously prepared for this interview. When you prepare, you kind of feel like you have a ability to really have an interesting conversation with the person.
Yeah, I mean, I also love what Oprah had to say, of course, because that's my industry, right? And one of the things she said that makes somebody an effective interviewer is you have to listen, right? You have to listen to the person you're actually interviewing. That's a novel idea. You've been doing a lot of that, sitting sort of in my seat.
Right.
How is it to be on that side of things for you, Dave?
Well, it's very important. When you're an interviewer, you prepare, as obviously you have, and so you've read the book, you know what it's about. So, but when somebody says something you're not prepared for, you have to listen and then maybe change what your planned questions were. Otherwise, you won't really have a good dialogue. So I often say when government agents come to me and say, would you give me a background check on somebody? And they start asking me questions. I feel that if I said this person's an axe murderer, they wouldn't listen. They just go on to the next question. And you have to actually listen to what the person says. So I try to listen and then take the lead of what the person's saying. And that's what Oprah said. She said she's not a great interviewer. She's a great listener.
Yeah, good advice for us all, no matter what industry we're in or what we're doing. David Rubenstein of the Carlyle Group, thank you so much. The book is called How to Lead, Wisdom from the World's Greatest CEOs, Founders, and Game Changers. Be well, my friend.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.